Dun dun dun. Hello again, precious friends. What are we going to talk about today? Well, today I want to talk about a video that Dr. Ken Berry published a few days ago. Unfortunately, I cannot link it for you because I was remiss and I didn't save it to my playlist on my YouTube account, so now I can't find it. Those shorts are blasted hard to find when you let one go anyway. So I can't link it for you. I'm sorry, but I'm sure most of you saw it. And in it, he made the assertion that he believes that the reason that the metabolic disorders that are so common nowadays were relatively rare in the 1900s was because people were eating that much more meat. And unfortunately, I think Dr. Berry is kind of barking up the wrong tree here. You know, with all due respect, I love you, Dr. Berry. You're responsible for me going down the low carb rabbit hole and my subsequent return to health. So, all due respect. But food and culinary history has been a pet project of mine for about 40 years now. And love you, but you're not a food historian and I am. So why do I even care to call Dr. Berry out? Is because I want all of us to be effective apologists for the low carb, ketogenic, and carnivore way of eating. And if we go about espousing theories that are either misinformed or just basically verifiably incorrect, that just gives our detractors ammunition, right? And we just don't need that, okay? So, with regard to Dr. Berry's assertion, according to USDA and other economic data, between the years of published for between the years of 1900 to 1910, the average American was eating about 87 pounds of beef a year. And friends, that equates to like a little bit less than 4 ounces a day. Okay, that's not a lot. It's true that it's about twice as much more as we eat now, but twice 2 ounces is still only 4 ounces, and that's still not enough to make that much of a difference. And also keep in mind that that 4 ounces includes the consumption of things like soup bones and tallow and offal. So really, it's just not that much. Now, it's true that people did eat a lot more pork then than now. But it still amounted to, according to the data, it still amounted to only about 4 ounces a day. And most of that was preserved pork, you know, ham, bacon, sausage. And again, that 4 ounces is inclusive of other non-meat portions of the pig, like bones and skin and innards. So, you know, we're talking 8 ounces of meat a day. That's just not enough to nourish your average adult human being. So we know that these people did rely on a mixed macronutrient diet. They did eat significant amounts of wheat flour, cornmeal, and potatoes, right? And curiously enough, they also ate almost as much sugar as we do today. Information from, again, the USDA and US sugar subsidies and import tariff statistics from the same period indicate that the average American was eating about 27 teaspoons of sugar a day, which, as compared to 34 now, yeah, not that much difference. So, how then in the world did we manage to escape all of this metabolic disaster when our diets in terms of carbohydrate intake weren't that much different? very curious. So to my mind, I'm thinking it wasn't the amount of meat that people were eating that had the biggest protective effect. Now, meat played a role, I'm absolutely positive, but I think it was important in terms of general nutrition. People were way more active at that point in time, and I believe that having sufficient amounts of meat is important for maintaining, and fat basically, for maintaining the bodily structures and the metabolic balance and the hormones that are necessary for people to be as strenuously physically active as they were. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. But what I believe really were the protective factors were, number one, that tobacco use was very uncommon, particularly cigarettes, okay? And the benefits of that are obvious to anybody with, more than 3 firing brain cells. The second one is, I believe, the basic absence of seed oils and other toxic pseudo foods that are ubiquitous today. And again, the benefits of that are obvious. But the last one, and I believe this one was the most impactful, I believe, is the fact that people in general in 1900 were way more physically active than we are now, okay? According to the National Institutes of Health, nowadays, the average person eats about 4,000 calories a day. And on top of that is semi-sedentary, if not completely sedentary, the average person. So, and I know calories, forgive me, but as of right now, there's not really any other metric that I can use to directly compare these statistics other than calories. So, until somebody else invents something better, right now I'm kind of stuck with calories, so I don't particularly want to hear it. Love you. So I believe the protective effect had to do with the amount of activity as a ratio of the amount of food that was consumed, okay? In 1900, the average person consumed approximately 3,000 calories a day. Women maybe a little bit less, men maybe a little bit more. And on top of that, most people walked at least a couple of miles a day. Most people stood or walked during their work days, which were generally 10-hour days and 6 days a week, by the way. And on top of that, men generally were doing a lot of heavy upper body labor at the same time for hours a day, okay? Children had household chores and farm chores, and most of their playtime was outdoors and active. So these people were extremely physically active. They were active on a level that most people are not today unless they're athletes, okay? So that much food and that much activity both together meant that the amount of food that was eaten was pretty generally almost fully metabolized within 12 to 24 hours of having eaten it. Okay, so that means that the chronic inflammatory issues from overconsumption, which almost everybody is suffering from nowadays, just didn't happen. Okay, to invoke Professor K, the effects of the Randall cycle were minimized during most of the time, okay, which in and of itself would have been beneficial. So despite the fact that these people depended on a mixed macronutrient diet, despite the relatively large intake of carbohydrates, they just didn't get sick, right? So why is it then we just can't go back to the way we were eating before? Well, in my humble opinion, it's because the vast majority of us at this point simply are not capable of that level of activity, right? I know I'm not, and I'm in pretty darn good shape for a 62-year-old woman, okay? I'm in better shape than almost all the 62-year-old women that I personally know, all right? And I'm in better shape than most 50-year-old women that I know. So when a human body has never been metabolically damaged, right, it reacts vastly differently to food sources, to food intake, especially carbohydrates, than a body that has been damaged, even when that damage has been somewhat ameliorated by an appropriate diet, okay? A lot of times, this damage becomes permanent before any overt symptoms crop up to draw our attention to the problem. So most of us, even though we are functioning really well now and we have what could be called vibrant health, if we tried to go back to eating that way and tried to go back to eating a largely mixed macronutrient diet, our bodies would never completely recover, right? We have to stay in this low carbohydrate zone because the damage has already been done in my estimation, and I thoroughly believe that in respect to myself. So we can't just go back. We have to go forward, but on a new tack, okay? We need appropriate amounts of well-tolerated exercise alongside a targeted, therapeutic, low carbohydrate, animal-based diet that's what is going to be most likely to restore our metabolic function, our hormonal function, which is going to be what is most likely to allow us to live in a vital and productive way, okay? There we are, my friends. I love you, Dr. Berry, but I think it behooves us to get it right. And I'm afraid that your assertion that it was the amount of meat we were eating is not only misinformed, but I'm afraid it's verifiably false. So, meat does play a role, right? But not in the way that you asserted that it does. But anyway, eat all the meat you want, friends. Eat it all, because that's how we're going to fix this. And then when our grandkids grow up and we've trained them to eat properly, they are going to be strong and vigorous, and they are not going to have any of the problems with eating whole food carbohydrates, or any of the problems with metabolism that we have suffered. Because you know what? The tide is changing, and we are going to fix this. All right? I love you, precious friends. Like, share, subscribe. Join me over on Facebook. I love you all, and I wish you peace, love, and meat, and we will talk again very, very soon.